Hello students, this is your history lesson. Today we are going to read chapter 5, The Coming of the Mughals from Understanding History for class 7. Let's get started. First of all, have a look on glossary. Ancestral of belonging to forefather. Memoirs, a historical account or biography written from personal knowledge. Subduing, overcome or bring under control. Obstacles, a thing that blocks one's way or prevents or hinders progress. Envoys, someone who is sent as a representative from one government or organization to another. Reassert, to do something to show that you still have power. Rooted, defeat and cause to retreat in disorder. Consolidate, make something physically stronger or more solid. Undisputed, about which there is no disagreement. Pined for, suffer a mental and physical decline, especially because of broken heart. Optimistic, hopeful and confident about the future. Adversity, a difficult or unpleasant situation. Deprive, prevent prevent of person or place from having or using something. Adversity, a difficult or unpleasant situation. Feudal system. A feudal system is a type of social and political system in which landholders provide land to tenants in exchange for their loyalty and service. Revenue. Revenue is the value of all sales of goods and services recognized by a company in a period. Exile, the condition of someone being or kept away, banned from their own country, village, etc. Observatory, a building from which scientists can watch the planets, the stars, the weather, etc. Exploited, make full use of and derive benefit from a resource. Mansab. The word mansab is of Arabic origin meaning rank or position. Conciliate. Stop someone being angry or discontented. Besieging. Surround a place with armed forces in order to capture it or force its surrender. Caravanserais was a roadside inn where travelers could rest and recover from the day's journey. Tussle, a vigorous struggle, typically in order to obtain or achieve something. Oppressive, cruel, harsh. Usurp, take a position of power, illegally or by force. Now open your book, page number 30. We will start reading of chapter 5, The Coming of the Mughals. For the past 20 years, Babur, the king of Kabul, had dreamed of conquering Hindustan. Babur had inherited the state of Farghana in Central Asia from his father Umar Sheikh Mirza in 1494. He was only 12 years old at the time and soon lost his kingdom to his ambitious relatives. He turned to Kabul and conquered it in 1504 but was never to regain his ancestral home Fargana or Bukhara or Samarkand. Ancestral of belonging to forefather. Kabul. Since the conquest of Kabul, Babur had dreamt of victory over Hindustan. He writes of this in his memoirs. Memoirs, a historical account or biography written from personal knowledge. From the time I conquered the land of Kabul till now, I have always been bent on subduing Hindustan, subduing, overcome, or bring under control. However, I was prevented. At length, the obstacles were removed, and I gathered an army. Obstacles, a thing that blocks one's way or prevents or hinders. 1519 and marched on to Bajor and Swat and then advanced to Behera on the west of the river Jhelum. Babur advanced up to the river Chenab and sent an ambassador to the Lodi Sultan demanding the territory which he felt belonged to the Turks. Receiving no reply, Babur captured Behra, Kosha, and the territory near Chenab and returned to Kabul. In 1524, he reached Lahore and capturing it, left it to Alauddin Lodi to rule as his governor. Daulat Khan Lodi retook Lahore and sent Alauddin back to Kabul as a refugee. Now Babur decided to teach Daulat Khan a lesson and set out in 1526 to become the emperor of Hindustan. Babur took advantage of the condition of the subcontinent at that time. The Delhi sultans had lost their hold on most of northern India except for Delhi, Agra, and the Doab, the land between the Ganges and Jamuna rivers. The Punjab had become independent under Daulat Khan Lodi, while Sindh, Multan, Jaunpur, Bengal, and Orissa had also become independent kingdoms. Threatened by Ibrahim Lodi, the ruler of Delhi and Agra, Daulat Khan sent envoys to Babur inviting his help. Rana Sangha of Mewar was a powerful Rajput ruler who favored the invasion by Babur because he thought that the latter, being a descendant of Timur, would defeat the Lodis, plunder, and return to Kabul. Rana Sangha would then take the throne of Delhi and Agra for himself. However, they were all proved wrong. Students, Babur was the founder of the Mughal Empire. He was king of Kabul. He had dreamed to conquer Hindustan. And he wrote this in his famous biography as well. So he gathered an army and marched on to Bajor and Sawat and then on the west of the river Jhelum. At that time, Lodi Sultan was ruler. He demanded to return his belongings, but Lodi did not give response to him. So he captured Lahore and made Alauddin Lodi to rule as his governor. But Ibrahim Lodi, who was last Sultan of the Delhi Sultanate, threatened him. So he invited Babur to help him. Babur organized his army in late 1525 and in the spring of 1526. He decided to descend from the heights of the Afghan mountains and conquer the plains of Hindustan. 2 years earlier, he had already conquered the Punjab and appointed a governor who was challenged by Daulat Khan Lodi, and Babur now had a reassert his rule. Reassert his rule mean to do something to show that you still have power. Ibrahim Lodi had already gathered a large force of men and elephants to face Babur's advancing forces. So students, Babur was invited by Daulat Khan Lodi So he decided to move downwards from the Afghan mountains to the plains of Hindustan. Ibrahim Lodi had also gathered a huge force of men and elephants to face Babur. The First Battle of Panipat 1526. Babur's 10,000 troops, made up mostly of Chogtai Turks and aided by cannon, lined up on the plains of Panipat just to the north and west of Delhi. It was 21st April 1526 and the battle started just as the sun was rising. Babur was a brilliant military leader. He arranged his men, cannons, and cavalry in such a way that by midday his troops had routed Ibrahim Lodi's army and laid claim to the throne of Hindustan. Routed defeat and caused to defeat in disorder. Delhi and Agra, with their enormous treasure, were now in Babur's hands, and the khutbah was read in the name of Zahiruddin Muhammad Babur. The Mughal Empire had come to stay. So, students, the first Battle of Panipat on 21st April 1526 was fought between the invading forces of Babur and the Lodi dynasty. It took place in North India and marked the beginning of the Mughal Empire and the end of the Delhi Sultanate because the Mughal forces of Babur defeated much larger ruling army of Ibrahim Lodi, Sultan of Delhi. The defeat of the Rajput chief Rana Sangha. Babur had to consolidate, make something physically stronger or more solid. His newly established empire by facing one more enemy challenging his power. Rana Sangha of Mewar, a worthy Rajput foe, surrounded Babur's troops with his much larger force. Babur had to raise the spirit of his troops who were losing heart, and he did so with an inspiring speech. The Battle of Kahuna on 16th March 1527 proved victorious for Babur, and Rana Sangha never challenged his rule again. Finally, Mahmud Lodi, Ibrahim's brother, gathered an Afghan and Bengali army and attacked Babur's forces only to be decisively defeated at Chaunsa in 1529. Babur was now the undisputed about which there is no disagreement, undisputed ruler of Hindustan, but he was to enjoy that position for only a year. The long campaigns and the hot Indian climate affected Babur, who fell ill and died in Lahore on 26 December 1530 at the age of 48. He was buried in his beloved Kabul. So, students, after knowing that the Mughal army had been weakened at the Battle of Panipat, the princes of Rajputana gathered an army even more larger than Lodi's and went to war behind Rana Sangha of Mewar. So, Babur was a very powerful ruler. So, he gathered his army. He also defeated Rana Sangha, who considered Babur as a foreign invader. He defeated him in the Battle of Kahuna. To escape Baburi, the memoirs of Babur. Babur's memoirs are a delightful tribute to the refreshing honesty and humor of the founder of the great Mughal dynasty. Despite being emperor of Hindustan, Babur pined for his Central Asian homeland and often spoke of the sweetness of its musk and melons. Pined for suffer a mental and physical decline, especially because of a broken heart. The cool breezes and fresh mountain air could not be compared to the hot and dust of the subcontinent. Babur's character is reflected in his autobiography as being a kind hearted monarch who cared for the welfare of his people. He was very generous, and when the conquest of Delhi brought huge wealth to him. It was divided among all the ranks of his army, and a good portion of it was sent to the holy cities of Makkah and Medina. At the same time, he was optimistic and courageous, optimistic, hopeful, and confident about the future. He was optimistic and courageous and had the physical strength of a lion. When faced with adversity, a difficult or unpleasant situation, Babur always took the path of determination and with his military strategies was able to defeat his foes. Foes, we can say enemies. Babur spent his last year in organizing the administration of the provinces. He did not deprive the original Hindu and Muslim landowners of their lands if they were loyal to him. Deprive, prevent a person of place from having or using something. Introducing a feudal system. Feudal system is a type of social and political system in which landholders provide land to tenants in exchange for their loyalty and service. Babur divided his territory into a large number of jagirs or estates and distributed them among the bags or nobles who had come with him from Kabul. These Jagirdars were made responsible for the civil administration and revenue collection of their areas. Revenue here is the value of all sales of goods and services recognized by a company in a period. Students, Tuzke Babur is the memoirs of the founder of the Mughal Empire. Babur was an educated prince, and his observations and comments in his memoirs reflect an interest in nature, society, politics, and economics. He was a kind hearted ruler. He always thought about the welfare of the people living in his state. Babur took from the people of Kabul only enough to pay his army. He told his men that the people must not suffer. He gave treasures to people who helped him and to the holy men from Samarkand. He sent some treasures to the holy cities of Makkah and Medina. He shared the rest with his family. Babur died at Agra in 1530. Humayun 1530 to 56. Beloved of Babur, Humayun was expected to carry on the legacy of his father. He was the eldest of Babur's sons and 23 when he succeeded to the throne. However, he did not have his father's energy and personality, and fate had a different role for him. Humayun inherited a kingdom which was as yet not fully in his control. He faced resistance from the Afghans and the Rajputs and had to try and subdue both to secure his throne. Humayun had also been asked by Babur to be kind to his brothers, and consequently he divided the empire among his three brothers, Kamran, Askari, Mirza, and Hindal. However, when Humayun needed support to fight the Afghan nobles who had gained risen against him, his brothers were not fully inclined to help him. Instead, they even sided with some of his enemies, and Humayun's nature was forgiving when he should have punished them. Humayun's kindness in dealing with his enemies, such as Babur Shah of Gujarat, Bahadur Shah of Gujarat, and under underestimating the clever and ambitious Afghan noble Sher Shah Suri lost him his empire within 10 years of being crowned emperor. Sheisha Suri had meanwhile taken control of Bihar and the rich province of Bengal. He now posed a challenge to Mughal power and had to be dealt with. The Battle of Kannauj in 1540 decided the fate of the Mughal Empire. Humayun was defeated and he fled to Persia, where he took refuge with Shah Tahmasip. Sheisha Suri declared himself Emperor of Hindustan and successfully put down all opposition to his rule. Students, Humayun was the son of the Mughal Emperor Babur. When Humayun was 22 years old, he was ill. Babur was very worried. Humayun got better, then Babur was ill and died. Humayun became the second Mughal emperor. Humayun tried to keep his father's empire. An Afghan leader named Sher Shah Suri wanted to take Delhi from him. He tricked Humayun. He said he would make peace, but he attacked with his army. Humayun's men did not like Delhi. They did not want to stay and fight. So, when Sher Shah Suri attacked, Humayun had to leave Delhi. He went to Persia, now Iran. So, Sheisha Suri declared himself an emperor of Hindustan and successfully put down all opposition to his rule. Humayun in exile. For the next 15 years, Humayun remained a fugitive. Fugitive, a person who is running away or hiding from a dangerous situation. Leaving Agra, he decided to go to Kashmir, but his brother Kamran blocked his way. Humayun then fled towards Sindh and took shelter with the Raja of Umarkot, and his son Akbar was born there in 1542. In 1544, Humayun took refuge with Tahms- Shah Tahmasip of Persia and spent 10 years there. To return Kandahar to the Persians and please the Shah, Humayun fought and defeated his brother Askari, and by 1550 he also captured Kabul from his brother Kamran and set up a court there. Finally, with Shah Tahmasip's help in 1555, Humayun recaptured the Punjab, Delhi, and Agra by defeating Sikandar Suri and ascending the throne of Hindustan after 15 years. Sadly, just 6 months later, Humayun had a fatal fall from the stairs of his private observatory. He was carrying books and he tripped as his feet were caught in his robe when he bent down on hearing the azan. All medical aid proved useless, and 17 days later, the khutbah was read in the name of Jalaluddin Muhammad, Humayun's 13-year-old son, who was given the title Akbar. Students, Humayun had to pass about 15 years in exile. After his defeat in Battle of Kannauj, Sher Khan did not allow him to sit in peace in Agra and chased him. Kamran, his brother, also put hindrance in his way of going to Kashmir. So Humayun had to run away as a fugitive to Sindh in order to save his life. After a prolonged struggle, Humayun could get rid of his brothers. He stayed in Afghanistan for some time, but ultimately, seeing an appropriate time, he returned to India and restored his lost empire. But unfortunately, due to an accident, he lost his life. And after him, Humayun's 13 years old son Akbar was given the throne of subcontinent. Humayun as a ruler. The long stay in Persia had greatly influenced Humayun, who adapted Persian culture. At Tabriz in Persia, he met the two artists Mir Sayyid Ali and Khwaja Abdus Samad of the Safavid school of painting and brought them to Agra. They were asked to illustrate the famous Persian classic Dastan-e-Amir Hamza. The Nastaliq script was also developed about this time, replacing the Naskh script. Urdu and Persian are still written in Nastaliq script in the subcontinent. Humayun was not a military genius like his father, but was deeply interested in astronomy, astrology, painting, and poetry. He was a kind and generous ruler whose kindness was exploited by his opponents. Despite that, Humayun proved to be optimistic and persevering as he fought back to regain his empire. Sher Shah Suri, 1540 to 45, an Afghan noble of outstanding capability, Sher Shah could have established as great a dynasty in Hindustan as that of the Mughals if he had not died so soon after becoming king. Sher Shah's father had a Mansa of 500 horses in Sarcasm in Jaunpur, where Sheisha learned administration in managing his father's estate, Pargana. Sheisha first entered Babur's service in 1527 and then of another local chieftain. He went on to build up his own force and consolidated his position in Bengal. Taking advantage of Humayun's weak position, Sher Shah took Delhi in 1540. In a short reign of barely 5 years, he established a strong administration by dividing the empire into 47 units and further subdivisions. Land reforms proved beneficial to the running of the empire as land was surveyed and the share of the government was fixed at one-third of the produce, which could be paid in cash or kind. At the village level, the panchayat system continued and the patwari and chokidar were responsible for law and order. Sher Shah built his administration on the pattern of the Delhi Sultanate. He reformed the currency and police and judicial and military departments. Many of these reforms were later adopted by Akbar. The basis of Sher Shah's administrative reforms was to look after the welfare of the people and to conciliate or stop someone being angry or discontented his Hindu subjects by giving them justice and a fair land revenue settlement. He was far-sighted to build public utilities such as communal kitchens, langare, fukra, alm houses, gardens, hospitals and maktabs, libraries and madrasas, schools. Sher Shah is acknowledged by most historians historians as a wise administrator and an able and kind ruler who tried to do his best for the welfare of his people by giving them peace and justice. Sher Shah was killed when a cannon exploded too close to him while besieging the fortress of Kalinjar in 1545. He was the most talented Afghan sultan, and he might have established a dynasty of almost Mughal dimensions had he not been killed in battle in May 1545. Students, one of the great Muslim rulers of India, Sheisha, rose from the rank of private to become emperor. He efficiently administered the army, tax collection, and built roads, rest houses, and wells for his people. He was generally tolerant for non Muslims as well. The Grand Trunk Road. Sheisha's greatest feat was the building of a road from Shunaga in Bengal to across the river Indus in the Punjab. It was 1500 miles long and was called Sarcasm Grand Road. Trees were planted on both sides of the road. Caravanserais were built all along the route where horses could be exchanged or rested. Food and lodging were provided for travelers and market towns developed near the serais, improving trade. A quick postal system was put in place with news writers and news carriers using these facilities. Sher Shah's foresight opened up the area for many generations to come. The Mughals extended the road farther west and at one time it crossed the Khyber Pass to Kabul in Afghanistan. Later, the British built on these lines and laid other roads to connect the subcontinent. The same Grand Trunk Road still exists in modern times. It has been metalled for use by cars and trucks carrying agricultural produce and industrial output. In present-day Pakistan, the motorway has similar facilities. Today, the Grand Trunk Road covers a distance of over 2,500 kilometers from its origin at Shonagar in central Bangladesh to Peshawar in Pakistan. Students, Grand Trunk Road is one of Asia's oldest and longest major roads. It has linked Central Asia to the Indian subcontinent. Over the centuries, the road acted as one of major trade routes in the region and facilitated both traveler and postal communication. The Grand Trunk Road is still used for transportation in present day Indian subcontinent. Sher Shah Suri's successors 1545 to 56. Sher Shah had left a strong empire to his son Islam Shah, who ruled for 9 years. He was succeeded by his son Feroz Khan, who was murdered by his uncle Muhammad Adil Shah. The tussle for the throne among the Afghan nobles weakened the empire as Sher Shah's later successors were weak and unfit to rule. Here, tussle means a vigorous struggle, typically in order to obtain or achieve something. The Afghan nobles became stronger and the peasants started to suffer under their oppressive rule. Oppressive, cruel, or harsh. When an Afghan noble, Sikandar Shah, seized Agra and Delhi, the empire was divided. The rise of Himu, a Hindu minister and general who was a tradesman by birth but tried to usurp usurp take a position of power illegally or by force, caused jealousy among the nobles. In this state of disunity and chaos, Humayun was able to take back his lost empire. Now come to the questions. Question 1. What led Babur to invade Hindustan in 1526? Answer. In 1524, Babur reached Lahore and capturing it, left it to Aladdin to rule as his governor. Babur decided to teach Daulat Khan a lesson and set out in 1526 to become the emperor of the Hindustan. Question 2. What challenges did Babur face when he came down from Kabul to Hindustan? Answer. Babur his army in late 1525 and in the spring of 1526 he decided to descend from the height of the Afghan mountains and covered the plains of Hindustan. Ibrahim Lodi had already gathered a large force of men and elephants to race Babur's advancing force. Question 3. Why is the first battle of Panipat considered important? Answer. The first battle of Panipat is important because it was Babur's first victorious battle. He would become he would become the ruler of Delhi and Agra. He won it and became the ruler of Delhi and Agra with his enormous triumph. Ibrahim Lodi, the ruler of Agra and Delhi, lost the battle. The khutbah was read in the name of Babur. Question 4. Was Rana Sangha of Mewar a worthy opponent of Babur? Answer. Yes, Rana Sangha of Mewar, a worthy Rajput, surrounded Babur's troops with his much larger force. Babur had to raise the spirit of his troops who were losing hearts. Question 5. The Tuske Babri is a good source of evaluating Babur's character. Do you agree? Answer. Yes, because it is a delightful tribute to the refreshing honesty and humor of the great Mughal dynasty. Despite being emperor of Hindustan, Babur pined for his Central Asian homeland and often spoke of the sweetness of its musk and melons. Question 6. Explain why Humayun faced problems during reign. Answer. He did not have his father's energy and personality. He faced resistance resistant from the Afghans and the Rajputs. His brothers were not fully inclined to help him. Humayun's nature was forgiving, dealing with his enemies, such as Bahadur Shah of Gujarat and ambitious Afghan, lost him his empire within 10 years of being crowned emperor. Question 7. Do you think Sheisha was a successful ruler? Give reasons. Answer. Sheisha built his administration on the pattern of the Delhi Sultanate. He reformed the currency and police and judicial and military departments. Many of these reforms were later adopted by Akbar. The basis of Sheisha's administrative reforms was to look after the welfare of the people and to conciliate his Hindu subjects by giving them justice and a fair land revenue settlement. He was far-sighted to build public utilities such as communal kitchens, langre fukra, armed houses, gardens, hospitals and maktabs, libraries and madrasas, schools. Sheisha is acknowledged by most historians as a wise administrator and an able and kind ruler who tried to do his best for the welfare of his people by giving them peace and justice. Question 8. How was Humayun able to recover his kingdom in 1555? Answer. After being defeated by Sheisha in the Battle of Kannauj in 1540, Humayun wandered from place to place and sought refuge from many kings. He was finally given shelter by the Shah of Persia. He spent the next 15 years in the court of the Shah. Meanwhile, he defeated his brother Kamran and became the ruler of Kabul and Kandahar. Sher Shah Suri died due to an accident in 1545 CE. His successors were weak and incompetent. Taking advantage of the situation, Humayun captured Delhi and Agra in 1555 CE and became the Emperor of India. Question 9. Why was the building of Sarcasm useful for Sher Shah's government? Answer. Sher Shah's greatest feat was the building of a road from Shunaga in Bengal to across the river Indus in the Punjab. It was 1500 miles long and was called Sarcasm Grand Road. Trees were planted on both sides of the road. Caravanserais were built all along the route where horses could be exchanged or rested. Food and lodging were provided for travelers, and market towns developed near the serais, improving trade. A quick postal system was put in place with news writers and news carriers using these facilities. Sher Shah's foresight opened up the area for many generations to come. The Mughals extended the road further west, and at one time it crossed the Khyber Pass to Kabul in Afghanistan. Question 10. Sher Shah laid the foundations for the administration of the Mughal Empire. Do you agree? Answer. Yes, Sher Shah laid the foundations for the administration of the Mughal Empire. In a short reign of barely 5 years, Sheisha established a strong administration by dividing the empire into 47 units and further subdivisions. Land reforms, panchayat, and postal system was introduced by Sheisha in Indian subcontinent. His reorganization of the empire laid the foundations for the later Mughal emperors, notably Akbar, son of Humayun. Sher Shah reformed the currency and police and judicial and military departments. Many of these reforms were later adopted by Akbar. Sher Shah's greatest feat was the building of a road named Sarcasm Grand Road. Over the centuries, the Grand Trunk Road has been one of the most important trade routes in the region. The Mughals extended the road further west, and at one time it crossed the Khyber Pass to Kabul in Afghanistan. Thanks for listening. For new videos, don't forget to subscribe my channel. And if you like my videos, please share and like.